established Rich coming right back at you. And today, I want to get into a conversation that people think is simple, but it's actually a lot more layered than people realize. The common narrative is that Snoop Dogg was not the first gangster rapper. And based on timelines and records, people point to other names like R.I.C.H, Schoolie D, N.W.A. Now, I'm not here to ignore the history and act like those names don't matter, because they absolutely do, and they deserve credit for what they contributed to the culture. But my argument is not about who said it first. It's about who made it real in a way that changed how everybody else had to be measured after that. When you look at Schoolie D and R.I.C.H, they were definitely talking about street life and gangsterism that was ahead of its time in that era. But there was still a clear line between the music and real life consequences. Even with N.W.A, who brought a whole new level of attention to what was going on in Los Angeles. The message was powerful, but it didn't come with the same danger that came with Snoop Dogg. And I can speak on this from experience because I was listening during that time. And I remember seeing these artists in different settings that didn't make me feel like they were in danger because of what they were saying. When Snoop Dogg entered the game, that feeling completely changed. And it wasn't just because of his flow or his charisma. It was because of what was attached to him in real life.
We, the jury in above entitled action, find the defendant, Calvin Brodus, not guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree.
I'm curious, what was going through your mind at the time that the jury was reading the verdict?
I left it in God's hand, Abby. That's why I looked so stone-faced. I didn't have no expressions, you know what I'm saying? It was all inner. I prayed on it. My family prayed on it. David Kenner, you know what I'm saying, put on the bomb case. Donald Ray, Marsha Morrissey, Paul Palladino, the whole dream team. They did what they were supposed to do when they gave the baton to the jury, and I couldn't do nothing but just bank on them and worry about what the outcome was going to be as far as to just sit there and hold my position and keep my head up high.
Snoop Dogg was connected to a real gang, the Crips, and that was not something people had to guess about or speculate on. More importantly, he was involved in a real murder case that put his freedom on the line. And that fact alone changes the entire conversation on what a gangster rapper really is. Once you have real life consequences like that connected to your name, the music and reality stop being a separate thing and become one. And that's the shift that I'm talking about. Because before Snoop, you could still listen to the music and see it as storytelling or representation. After Snoop, that line was gone. And people started asking a different question. Not how does this sound, but how real is this? That question didn't exist before him. And that's why I don't define first on who made the first gangster rap. I define it based on the standard that everybody else had to live up to once they came out. And once Snoop Dogg entered the game with that real life element attached to him, hip hop shifted into a space where authenticity was no longer optional. It became a requirement. And that requirement didn't come from Schoolie D, R.I.C.H, or N.W.A. It came from the moment people realized that Snoop's music matched his life in a way they couldn't ignore. And that's why I stand on what I said. Because this ain't about disrespecting the originators. It's about understanding who changed the expectations for everybody that came after him. After Snoop, you had to prove it. Once Snoop set that standard, the entire industry shifted in a way that people still feel today, even if they don't realize when it started. Before Snoop, you could create a character or a narrative and be successful with people. They were not demanding proof that your life matched your lyrics. After him, that was no longer enough. And artists started being judged not just on their music, but on their real life situations. When you look at somebody like 50 Cent, his story of being shot 9 times became the core of his image and the reason why he became so successful. When you look at Gucci Mane, his real life situations, including defending himself in a deadly incident, became part of how people view his authenticity. As you move further into the 2000s and even today, you see a pattern where real life events are not separate from the music. They are part of the brand. That expectation didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't start with the early pioneers who were building hip-hop. It started when Snoop Dogg made it impossible to ignore the connection between what you rap about and what you actually live. Now, to be fair, I can understand the argument of the other side, because somebody could say the first gangster rapper should be the person who first introduced the style. And if you define it that way, then yes, you can make a strong case for Schoolie D and R.I.C.H. You can also say that N.W.A. brought the genre into the mainstream and created the platform that allowed artists like Snoop to prosper. But my position is that introducing something and defining it are two different things. And I believe that Snoop Dogg is the person who defined what a gangster rapper really is. Because after him, you couldn't just rap about that life without people questioning, were you really about that life? People had to prove their authenticity through real life situations. That blurring of the line between music and real life is what causes a lot of problems we see today, where people feel like they have to live out the most extreme part of their lyrics. But whether you see that as good or bad, You can't deny that it became part of the culture after Snoop Dogg came in the game. And that's why I don't look at this as a superstar who made gangster rap popular. I look at him as the first artist where the music, the image, and the real life consequences all came together. So when I say he's the first real gangster rapper, I'm not ignoring history. I'm interpreting it based on impact and what changed after he came. And if you look at everything that came after him, from how artists are marketed to how they are judged, it all traces back to that moment where hip hop stopped being about what you say and started being about what you can stand on. But hey, that's just my opinion. What's yours? Like, comment, subscribe, establish Rich. I'll be back with another one. Peace.